Hello, I'm Kathleen Krentz, and I'm one of the Godly Play teachers here at Clayton Valley Presbyterian Church, welcoming you to this viewing of Godly Play. We offer Godly Play most Sundays, except the first Sunday of the month when we're meeting in person, because we have our Communion Sunday together in the sanctuary. Every other Sunday, we welcome the children to this classroom, if they're ages 3 and up, to share a Bible story told in the Montessori tradition, which is very open-ended. If you haven't watched before, you'll notice that. Once we're able to come back together again when it's safe, I'm sure I'll be wearing a mask, as our videographer is now. We didn't do that today, just so you'd be able to hear me as clearly as you can. When the children come to this room after starting in the sanctuary with Pastor Barbara, we get ready at the threshold of our door to come to the story circle. And we always start the same way, no matter which teacher is leading the story. We say, "The Lord be with you." And then we invite one of the people at the circle. It could be Savannah or Tyler. It could be Sparrow or Charlie. It could be Katie or Elizabeth. Whoever's turn it is, to go over to the calendar of the church year, the great circle of the church year that has no beginning and no end, and helps us know where our story is happening. Now, of course, we're in all the green and growing Sundays of ordinary time. So since I don't have one of our friends here with me now, I'll just have to move the arrow myself to the third Sunday after Pentecost, the third Sunday in ordinary time. Oh, my goodness. This will happen sometimes. One of our Lenten Sundays has come off, but we know where it belongs, so we'll just put it back. Good. Then we come back to the circle, and everyone gets ready. We need to be ready with the stories to hear what it is that's in the story just for each one of us today. We have stories of how we worship as a church. Those are behind me. We have the parables, mysteries. Those are off in the corner. And on either side of the room, we have stories from both the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, and the Greek scriptures, the New Testament. Today, I'm going to go to the shelves to get the story that we'll tell from the Hebrew scriptures. We always want to look where the story is, because once you've heard a story in this room, it becomes yours forever and ever and ever. So we want to know where it came from so we can find it to work with it again. And of course, we need to know where to put it back so that other people can find it. This one's heavy, so I really want to use 2 hands. I don't want to drop it. Sort of the color of sand, isn't it? Almost like a desert environment. It's not the desert box, so we know it's not in the desert. But it's almost the color of a dry place. The people of God were in exile. They had been taken prisoner, taken from their homes, and brought far away. They'd been there so long, some of them even had jobs at the court. Daniel was one who had a very important job at the court of the king. God had given Daniel learning and skills and wisdom. People respected Daniel. it happened that the king began to have strange dreams. And he asked his advisors about the dreams that he was having, and the advisors couldn't tell what was happening, and so they knew that Daniel was wise and very learned, and so they sent for Daniel. The king told Daniel about the dream that he had. It was about a ghostly figure, a figure that got bigger and shinier and then kind of disappeared. Daniel listened and he prayed. And he told the king that the dream meant that he too would become bigger and more important, but he would disappear. The king took Daniel seriously, and he kept Daniel closer in the court. But the strange dreams kept happening. The next time the king had a strange dream, he sent for Daniel. This dream, he told Daniel, was about a great tree with all manner of fruit growing from it and birds, and was filled with animals. And then the tree grew and grew and grew, and then all the birds and animals left. Once again, Daniel listened and he prayed. And he told the king that he was like the tree, growing bigger and bigger, but then it would disappear. It would disappear for 7 years. The king would live like one of the animals that left. And you know that's what happened. The king was overturned, and he had to leave for 7 years and live like an animal before he was allowed back. And then the dreams continued, but the old king, he was overturned, and his son, who did not like Daniel very much and did not know God, his son became the king. His son even used things that were stolen from the temple in Jerusalem when the people were taken into exile. He used them at a party, at a great banquet. And at that banquet, there was strange writing that became on the wall. No one could understand it, no one could read it, and so they had to send for Daniel. It said, the writing, that God would bring an end to the king's rule, and then in fact Babylon would be divided and separated between Persia and Medes. And do you know that very night, the king was killed. And then King Darius from Persia came. It had come true. But Daniel was made one of the rulers of parts of the kingdom. Now, because he was learned and skillful and wise, and his understanding through prayer had been shown to be so valuable to all these kings, the other rulers of the parts of the kingdom were jealous. So they got together without Daniel, and they tried to think of a way that they could come up with a rule that Daniel couldn't possibly follow, even though he was very good. And they came up with a rule that they would make, a new law. They passed it, even though Daniel didn't like it. They outvoted him. And the new law said that you had to worship the king, King Darius. They knew that Daniel couldn't keep that rule. Daniel loves God. They knew that. He couldn't keep that, so they waited. And one day, when he was in his room praying, they caught him. They took him before Darius and they said, "This man Daniel is not following the law." Darius, he wasn't real convinced that was the right thing to do, but a law is a law. And so the punishment for that was to take Daniel to the den of lions. A pit filled with hungry, ferocious lions, and throw Daniel down there. This is the picture an artist made of Daniel praying while he was with the lions. Darius knew that Daniel was wise and skilled and learned, that he was a good man. And Darius worried about Daniel down in the lion's pit. And when the sun came up the next day, he hurried to the pit and he called down, "Daniel, Daniel, are you still there?" And Daniel looked up to the ceiling and he said, "Don't worry. I prayed and God sent an angel to protect me." And just like in the picture that the artist made, the lions slept. That's when King Darius knew that Daniel was a righteous man and that the others had tried to catch a righteous man in a way that was wrong. And so he rescued Daniel, and the others had the same punishment. They went in the den of lions. Darius kept Daniel with him through his rule. Daniel had great favor and great influence, and he lived righteously all the rest of his days, living his faith that could not be seen, living his faith in God. Now, I wonder if there's a part of this story that you like. I wonder if you like some of the dreams. Some of you might like that Daniel got out of the lion's den. I wonder if there's a part that you think is important. Parents and grandparents always ask you, "Now, what did you learn today?" But really, we want to know, what about this story was about you and for you? What did you think was important? All this happened when the people were prisoners. They couldn't go home. And yet Daniel got his education, and he worked hard, and he was honest and true to God. I wonder if there's some place in this story where you might be, or a part that's about you. I wonder if there's something in the story we could leave out but still have enough story. I wonder if there's parts of the story you wonder about. We wonder and we take our questions. We hear these stories our whole lives, and we can still wonder. Sometimes we have new questions, but we can make them our work. One way that we make them our work is we might make a picture or a painting about Daniel. Maybe we could use the clay and make our own den of lions. And you could use more clay to make lions, right? Use whatever you have at home and make something that's just about you and what's important in this story for you. Sometimes your fingers know what that is before your head does. Here in this room, after we've told the story and we've done our work, We put everything away, and everyone comes back to the circle so that we can have a time of prayer and a feast together. Now at this circle, no one can say, now it's time to pray, because if you want to pray, you can, but sometimes you don't. We just make sure that we are still with our hands and our mouths and our bodies so that every person here has a chance to pray. And we share the holding cross. We pass it. The person here always starts, and it goes all around the circle while we wait for each person to pray. Sometimes out loud, sometimes only to themselves. Maybe not even words, only God understands. And then the cross comes back to the storyteller, and together we say the prayer that Jesus taught us so long ago, that everybody says when we're in the sanctuary together. And after prayer, then we have our feast. It's not the feast that everybody else always has. Ours is a little bit different. For one thing, we like to have matzah. We like to have matzah for our bread because it reminds us of the desert stories. It reminds us when the people had to leave to seek freedom and they didn't have time for that bread to rise. But we always have the bread because it reminds us of the time that Jesus was in the upper room with his friends, and he took the bread and he blessed it. And when he broke it, he told them, "This is my body broken for you." They didn't understand at the time. And we have cup. We have water, and in this room we have water because we have the water of creation, right? The water that's all water. The water of freedom, the water of baptism, the water of life. And we remember the cup that Jesus blessed with his friends in the upper room. And he invited them to drink from it. He invited them, drink all of it. For I will be with you to the end of the age. Of course, he was with them that night having supper, so they couldn't understand why he said that. But they never forgot, and neither do we. And so we have the bread and the cup. And you can do that at home. You could have a cracker or bread. You could have water, or you could have juice maybe. And remember that time that all of us have that together to celebrate the story and knowing that God is present with us always. So until our next story, or until the time that we can all be here together at this circle together, may God bless you and keep you always.